Mic check 1 2 1 2. Mic check 1 2 1 2. That's right. We are here live, and this is the March 5th, 2023 edition of the Boxing Source Radio Show. I'm your host, James Bell, the leader of the Boxing Source on social media. You can check us out through Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and also the website, theboxingsource.net. Um, you could support us by following the channel, YouTube channel, and also you could get at us through the other means by just liking the pages, following the pages, get what's going down on news and notes within the sport of boxing, but also supporting the podcast. After the live podcast, you can listen to it on demand through iTunes, Google Podcasts, Spotify, even on Amazon Music. It's on Amazon Music and iHeartRadio. So we would appreciate all the support for those that are the fans of boxing. So with that being said, we want to get into what's going down in boxing. You had, of course, a few things that went down last night, particularly in the featherweight division, as you had the WBC interim featherweight title on the line. Brandon Figueroa versus Mark Magsayo. Of course, Mark Magsayo was the former WBC featherweight champion, had one defense against Ray Vargas, lost that defense against Ray Vargas. And, Brandon Figueroa was coming up from the 122-pound division, did lose to Stephen Fulton in 2021, but then came up to face Carlos Castro and get a stoppage victory over Carlos Castro last year. So this kind of like set the stage for this particular bout between Brandon Figueroa and Mark Magsayo. And, I felt like it was about that, with Mark Magsayo. I'll just be straight up with you. I wasn't really too sold on Mark Magsayo, even with the victory that he had over Gary Russell Jr. That was by decision. I really didn't see much from that particular bout that he had against Russell. And that he pretty much got his opportunity there against Gary Russell Jr. with his knockout win over Julio Ceja, and he was losing that fight there against Julio Ceja. Had also been knocked down by Ceja before getting that KO victory there in the 10th round. But then, of course, after that, got the fight against Gary Russell, won against Gary Russell by decision, fought against Ray Vargas, lost to Ray Vargas by decision. And so he was back into this position against Brandon Figueroa. And, for those that were, following the fight leading up to it, that on the day of the weigh-in, that, Mark Magsayo had initially got there a little bit overweight. She'd been overweight, probably about 3/4 pound over the featherweight limit, but he was able to make weight, before they could say that he would not be fighting for the interim title, but he was still able to be there and compete against Omar Figueroa Jr. And for me, I thought the bout was a fairly competitive bout in a very good card, actually, that was on Showtime, Premier Boxing Champions presentation. Now, those first few rounds, it looked like Magsayo was very active with a number of his shots, was throwing multiple combinations over the course of those early rounds, and that, Figueroa was, trying to, get inside, work on the inside, and, get to the body of Mark Magsayo, which, I would say is a pretty good strategy for, an opponent that, initially didn't make weight, so he probably had some issues trying to get himself down to that 126-pound limit. So why not try to go after him early, go to the body early to see if his stamina wouldn't be all too hot in the second half of the fight. But you had Mark Magsayo. There was times when Mark Magsayo was timing Figueroa very well, or fighting off the back foot. Was catching him with good counter shots. Like I said, landing a number of combinations. At the tail end of some of the rounds that took place there. So I just felt like he was doing pretty well. Over the course of the first half of the fight. But Figueroa, was there right in front of him, still walking forward, coming forward at him, and, still throwing, a good number of punches to, try to get to him. So the thing about it was like either you like the activity of Brandon Figueroa, or if you like the harder punches that were being landed from Mark Magsayo. And that was, for me, that was like the first half of the fight. That kind of like, summarized the first half of that fight between Figueroa and Magsayo. But the body work by Brandon Figueroa early in the fight seemed to have been paying off in the second half of the fight, where you're seeing Magsayo like look really tired at times. His legs weren't necessarily there. In that he was, really leaning forward a number of times, and the referee that was, over this particular fight was really getting on Mark Magsayo when it came to clinching. Thomas Taylor was, warning Mark Magsayo, within the start of that second half of that fight, as far as like, the clinching was concerned. So that, was a thing that may have been a factor, going into or going through those rounds, that, hey, if he's like there coming forward and trying to tie up Brandon Figueroa, if, Thomas Taylor, the referee, was like saying, hey, man, you're going to have to, cut that a little bit. And lo and behold, here in that ninth round, right? Or eighth round, you had Thomas Taylor like say, hey, man, I'm going to take a point from you. So he took a point from Mark Magsayo. And, at that time, live, I thought that was huge because, I felt like the fight was really close at that point. So when they took that point away, I was like, well, what's going to happen at the rest of the round? Is it going to be something where it would be a 10-8 round for Brandon Figueroa, or would it be an even round? You know what I'm saying? So where, if Magsayo would have been able to get the better of it, then he could, make that round even. And I thought, that he had made it an even round because of his activity at that particular point. But you see that after that, Brandon Figueroa had multiple times, at least I felt like he had multiple times in that ninth round and in that 10th round to score knockdowns on Mark Magsayo, because Mark Magsayo was not only coming forward, but he was leaning forward and was having his head down, and he really didn't have his legs. So Brandon Figueroa was continuing to do work to the body, but he just could get enough spacing away from Mark Magsayo to where when you see Magsayo down on the canvas, Thomas Taylor wouldn't, rule that as a knockdown. But if you just created enough spacing and then threw like a couple of, body shots, or like, tag him upstairs a little bit, before he, tripped and went down, then yeah, they probably could have counted that a knockdown. But that's, how I assessed it, live while it was going on, before it went to the scorecards. So he had that opportunity there, in the 9th and the 10th round to, really put it on Mark Magsayo, but just couldn't really, get that thing where he probably could have had like a 10-8 round in that particular sense, But, with that being said, you had, once again, Mark Magsayo holding, and it seemed like Thomas Selleck just wasn't really down with all of that holding. So another point was taken away from Mark Magsayo in the 11th round, and then in the 12th round, you've seen both of those fighters go at it. That was a very, very good 12th round by both fighters. And then, it just came down to, the scorecards where you had two scores of 117 to 109 and one score of 118 to 108, all in favor of Brandon Figueroa. And Brandon Figueroa gets the win. He is the interim featherweight title holder right now. A number of people are saying that he'll be next in line to face the full champion, WBC champion Ray Vargas, who, of course, tried to get the WBC super featherweight title, but fell short against O'Shaquie Foster. So he said, I'm going back down. I'm going to stay as the champ in the featherweight division. But here with these scores, man, you had two scores again of 117, 109, and one score of 118 to 108. So, like I'm gonna say it here in the title, this is pretty much how like Figueroa beats Magsayo. Was it a robbery? Well, I would say the fight was close. I mean, you could say that Figueroa probably had gotten the upper hand in this. Probably could have won this thing 7 rounds to 5 or something like that. But we had this thing here where I just felt like the scores were way off from what I was thinking. When you have one judge that has score of 118 to 108, which if the points weren't taken away, then you probably have a 118 to 110 score in favor of Brandon Figueroa. That means that particular judge gave Brandon Figueroa 10 rounds, and two judges, that's Gary Ritter and Fernando Villarreal, gave Brandon Figueroa 9 of the 12 rounds of there in this particular fight. And especially for me in the first half of the fight, I thought it was much closer than that. I thought that Mark Magsayo may have won at least 3 of those first 6 rounds there with his counterpunching, and that he had more powerful shots there in that particular instance. So I kind of just felt like it would have been a lot closer bout than that. The point deductions were a significant factor, but I didn't think it would be something to the point of where it made the fight out of reach. With this type of a scorecard, like he had those points taken away in the 9th round and the 11th round. So that kind of meant that, for me, I think they said in the judges' scorecards that Figueroa may have had a huge majority of those first 6 rounds. And I just thought that was, kind of strange there. Now, Figueroa was the more active fighter over the course of the 12 rounds, according to punch stats, CompuBox statistics. You had him landing 176 total punches out of 653 thrown, and Magsayo actually landed more shots in the course of the 12 rounds, but threw 593 total punches, landed 179. So it was just 3 more punches landing. He was more accurate with his shots. It's just that I guess the overall activity of Brandon Figueroa was the determining factor there for the judges, I guess, to give him the advantage over Mark Magsayo. And Mark Magsayo's lead promoter there, Sean Gibbons of Manny Pacquiao Promotions, of course, was very upset about this particular result. He said that he pretty much called the overall scoring pathetic. So This is the thing there. Now, Sean Gibbons was like saying like you want to say that the man fought in San Antonio. This is in reference to Mark Magsayo fighting Ray Vargas. He fought Ray Vargas in San Antonio, fought his ass off, as it says, lost a very close disputed decision, which he thought that he won. But he said here against Figueroa, he said that those scorecards were pathetic. He said, I've never seen, you cannot, no matter how you ended up, score rounds 4 through 12 for Brandon Figueroa. And he also puts up that he says, hey, also want to know why the state of California changed one of the judges. And they said that they switched off one of the judges before this fight took place. But he said that Mark Magsayo pretty much like fought his butt off over the course of those 12 rounds. Everybody saw the fight. Even with the point deductions, the scorecards could have been 115, 113, or 114, Hill 114, but 117, 109, no. So it was like, like he felt like that whole thing as far as like the judge, one of the judges being switched, and also having those scorecards be that far, that wide in favor of Brandon Figueroa, that was just, really a whole different thing there that like threw him off. But that is a definite setback there for Mark Magsayo. That is his second consecutive loss there by decision. And like I said, I mean, he had held the WBC belt, but only had one defense of that world title. So I mean, it's almost like a grand opening, grand closing type of a thing there for Mark Magsayo, and you have to see like what is going to be next up for him. Here at this particular juncture, you already have, Brandon Figueroa talking about, fighting Ray Vargas next for that WBC featherweight championship. So for Mark Magsayo, I mean, he's a guy, I guess, that has that ability to, possibly get big wins there at 126, but also, like I was saying, initially here in this particular juncture, like he had to do some things in order to get down to that 126-pound limit for this fight against Brandon Figueroa. So, maybe he could try his luck in the 130-pound division. Who knows? That could be an option for him. I'm not seeing what other potential things could be out there, that he could go after, especially at 126, because I think he's kind of like utilized his options there at 126. I'm looking at, the rankings out there at 126, and I really don't see that many potential opponents out there for Mark Magsayo at this particular point. So it might be a little bit of a better option for him to go up to 130 pounds. But I don't know. Maybe Sean Gibbons there of Manny Pacquiao Promotions will see if they can line up something for Mark Magsayo later on this year. So we'll see how that goes. But like I said, Brandon Figueroa, getting that win. Potentially could face Ray Vargas later this year for that WBC featherweight title. I think, and that would be a good little fight between Figueroa and Ray Vargas. I think both of those guys are very active as far as like their offensive output. Vargas, to me, is there as a lanky guy, 5'7" with a reach of 70 and a half. But they say he's listed at 5'7", but it looks like he's taller than 5'7" though. But him against Figueroa for that WBC featherweight title, that should be a good little scrap. But depends on if that's going to be a main event or not. Who knows? We'll see how that kind of shapes up for him. But also you had in the card, right? You had in the co-featured bout former unified champion Jared Hurd, and he was unified at 154, going up there against Jose Mercedes or Armando Resendiz. And this particular bout was at a catchweight. It was supposed to be, around that middleweight division, but they gave, the whole thing about a 1 or 2 pound, leeway in that sense. So, we'll see, how that go, how they do that. As long as it's not like a world title fight, you kind of like get that thing there. But Jared Hurd, like I said, former unified champion at 154, had come back, sometime back against Luis Arias at the 160 pound division around, the middleweight division. Ended up losing by split decision there and hadn't been in the ring since that fight, June 2021, against Jose Resendiz, who, like I said, he had only one loss, but, he had been, fairly active, in recent times. He had 2 fights in 2021. He did lose to Marcos Hernandez at the Armory in Minneapolis in 2021, but had a fight in October of last year. So he had been, at least more active than Jared Hurd in this sense. And then also with Jared Hurd, this is Jared Hurd that, was in the new camp with Andrew Council. Of course, he had been under the tutelage of Kate Corona for, the majority of his career. Up until this point. So you had a brand new camp there for Jared Hurd, and he was also like working, doing his camp outside of the Washington D.C. area, which Jared Hurd is from. But in this particular fight, number of people highly, credited or highly favored Jared Hurd in this bout. And I'd say, the thing is that Jared Hurd, they were trying to see if he was the same Jared Hurd as, when he was doing there, when he was in the 154 pound division. A number of people felt like he was a big guy, 154, in that a majority of the fights that he had, he pretty much overwhelmed his opponents and just walked through the offense in order to get off what he got off against the likes of Erislandy Lara, against Tony Harrison and other fighters. But of course, he did fall short against Julian J. Rock Williams, and that's where he lost those titles at 154. And we've seen what happened with Luis Arias. So here in this bout against Jose Resendiz, we wanted to see what he was going to do, if he had a couple of elements that were different in his game or whatnot. But it just seemed like it was the same thing here with Jared Hurd, in that he would just try to get down, get on the gritty, and try to walk through his opponent and wear down his opponent. But the thing here with Jose Resendiz, right, is that you got Resendiz that has fought the majority of his career at the 168 pound limit. And actually, he had a number of fights that were north of 168 pounds early in his career. So this is somebody that, was come down from 168 or 170 plus to get to where he got to for this weight. So who knows where he is able to rehydrate to. But given that, you're going up against a guy that's not necessarily someone that could be smaller than you, or that somebody that's used to taking punches from bigger guys, So, you trying to walk down an opponent like Jose Resendiz probably isn't going to have the same success as you had against the majority of the fighters that you're fighting at 154. And that's what happened here. You had Resendiz that took a lot of good big shots from Jared Hurd. I think there was like one particular one that stood out to me was when Jared Hurd landed a right uppercut. And it came from a good little distance, but he landed a right uppercut, bam, that really it looked like it really rocked Resendiz, but Resendiz took that uppercut and he was like, oh yeah, that's what's up. Yeah, I'm coming. Yeah, I got it. And after that particular point, you just see like Resendiz was able to just take everything that Jared Hurd was throwing and threw like a whole lot more shots that Jared Hurd really couldn't necessarily handle. So it's one thing to try to have a strategy of a counter punching strategy, which it looked like Jared Hurd was doing, but when you do have something like that, you got to do it to the point where either you have something that that'll hurt your opponent, or you're going to do a counter shot and then move out of the way or move out of the pocket or move out of range of your opponent. And Jared Hurd doesn't have that type of ability to do that. So, yeah, he was hitting Resendiz with those counter shots, but Resendiz was still right there. So by the time of like round 8 and round 9, you just seen the overall activity of Resendiz pick up, and you didn't necessarily get Jared Hurd changing things up. I know that Andrew Council was talking to him in the 8th, particularly in the 8th and 9th rounds, is saying, "Hey, look, you're gonna need probably a knockdown or a knockout to win this fight. I'm gonna be straight up with you." That's what he was saying there in the corner of Jared Hurd. But Jared Hurd was just still doing the same thing, pretty much like, keeping his, right hand up towards his face and having the left hand down, which I thought was a bad strategy there, because you're just opening yourself up for right hands to keep coming at you without, much movement. If you're going to try to do that, try to do a catch and shoot, you got to have something coming after that. And Jared Hurd didn't necessarily have that. You know what I'm saying? No catch and shoot type of a strategy, not really using a jab on a consistent basis. You've seen it a few times over the course of the fight, but nothing to have a certain rhythm to throw off what Resendiz was doing. And so the overall punishment coming from Resendiz, forced the doctor to step up to the ring at the beginning of that 10th round. And, he just seemed like he pretty much had a damaged jaw, Hurd did, and the doctor just called off the fight. And so that was a TKO victory there for Jose Armando Resendiz. So he scores that victory. He is now 14-1. And that, according to a number of folks that had pretty much done the picks ahead of time, that was a big upset, But I mean, for Jared Hurd, that just is a huge, huge setback for him. Immediately after the fight, I was saying that maybe he should contemplate retirement at this particular point. I know that there was a lot of stuff that he had to, deal with over the past year and a half plus. Like I said, the passing of his father due to COVID and a heart attack. Going through a completely new camp. But he says hey, I mean, he as far as I've seen a couple of hours ago, it just seems like he says that he wants to get back in the ring pretty soon. But we'll see about that. Bringing in a guest here to talk about the fights that happened yesterday. Frequent guest on the show, huge contributor to the Boxing Source here, and that's the Boxing Academic in the building. What's going on?
What's going on, man? How you doing tonight?
All good, man. All good. Just chopping it up about last night's fights there on Showtime Championship Boxing. Just kept coming off that thing there with Hurd versus Resendiz, man, and like I was saying, man, it just looked like, even though Hurd was like in the middle of a new camp and everything like that, it just seemed like he was the same person as he was when he was fighting 154 pounds. And, you can't necessarily fight like that, for so long, unless if you're fighting against someone that that you could really overwhelm. And it's not like, Hurd is someone that has the ability to cut off the ring or like say has a punch that could really, hurt his opponents. He just wears his opponents down. That's like how he won the majority of his fights. But here, this fight against Resendiz, like I said, when you got somebody that has, been fighting guys that are 170 pounds plus or around 168 or something, taking punches from someone that, is around like 158 pounds or so or whatnot, and like, or getting down to that, like that isn't really much of an issue for Resendiz. So, once he started taking a number of those big shots from Jared Hurd, it was like, oh yeah, I got him. I got him. And so he's like, yo, I'm walking through these punches. I'm gonna throw punches on my own, and I'm gonna just say, hey man, if you're not able to block it and you can't really counter or get out of the way, then I'm gonna just weigh you down. It was almost like he was out doing what Hurd usually does. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So I mean,
It's I'm sorry. It's kind of like once he realized that he could take those shots, he definitely took more chances and started pressing the action a bit more. Um, one thing I can say about her, well, the fight in general, probably not the best style, the best type of fighter to bring him in with after being off a long layoff and changing things up. This wasn't maybe later, but a fighter who needs to build their confidence, give it all that he can in the ring, and came up on the short side of the end for the last 2-3 times. I get it. Al Heyman is putting his guys in more competitive fights to justify the price that we got to pay for it. But as far as Hurd goes, this wasn't the best style for him coming in. The thing though is that his win betrayed him. As you said, he's normally the guy who take a bunch of shots, press the action, and wears down his opponent. And so he kind of keeps the pressure going while his opponent withers. With this guy, Resendiz, he definitely he no any way you cut it, he has good win. And he wasn't taking any killer shots to where that affected his win. But at the end of the day, the man got good win because he wasn't fresh, but he was like, ready to go for them championship rounds had it been a 12-round fight.
Yeah.
The thing though, in Jared Hurd going back to the drawing board and coming out of this layoff, before his win betrayed him, I would argue that Jared Hurd looked good to me. Good in the sense that first 3 rounds, he came out and you could tell he worked on different things. First round, I think that he fought off the back foot on the first round, sort of being sort of timid, just to feel it out. Second round, he came out totally different style, pressing the action, stepping forward, pressing the action, stand on the boy's shoulder, and throwing shots. And to me, he won most of that round, and then Resendiz came on toward the end and then got off a lot of shots at the end. Once you can tell, Hurd kind of got tired. And then the third round, he was on his back foot on that one, but the difference between the first round and the third round is that he started to counter. And instead of him being on the back foot going backwards, he was just like stationary. Like he had his weight on his back foot, but he kind of kept the center of the ring. I can't say if he kept the center of the ring per se, but he kept his he was not retreating, and he kept his ground, and then he countered off of that. Fast forward, Resendiz taking shots, Hurd taking shots, and then you could see Hurd throwing less and less shots, ain't throwing as many shots as he normally throw, taking about the same punishment. In the first few rounds, though, he was dodging shots. He wasn't taking as many shots as he normally take. And it wasn't until he got tired to where he reverted back to what he knew, and then he started taking a bunch of shots. His hand was down. But, I hope the young man, well, I don't know how old he is, but I hope the fella just understands that it's a process. And, the rounds that he was in and his win didn't betray him. He looked good to me. You could tell he working on different things, showing good looks. He wasn't getting hit as much early. And it wasn't until he sort of got tired and just reverted back to what he knows, which is what anybody would do. That's when he started getting hit and stuff. So, silver lining in it. Bad style, bad matchup. This guy's probably better than they realized, or they probably knew how good he was. It'd be interesting to see him against a certain style that would give Resendiz, trouble. But, with his win and stuff, and if he can make it that weight class, I mean, he ain't, from what I can see, ain't a world beater per se, but, he at least will give people competent action. But, Jared Hurd hold his head up, bad matchup, bad style, looked like he bit his lip. And to be honest, he would have came out and fought, but I'm not sure he would have got the outcome that he wanted.
Well, he said like he knew that it was going to be a tough fight there against Resendiz. And what you would say, like, as far as like the ages, like Resendiz was coming in there like 24 years old, and Jared Hurd said at 32, but like people say, like it's like you're 32 years old, like that's in some sense it's pretty young, but given the fights that Jared Hurd has been in over the course of his career, like taking punishment is still taking punishment, and that kind of like is an issue there when you have to take all of those shots and you don't really do much to kind of nullify that in your subsequent fights. And so for him it was like I just seen like him like taking way too much punishment, especially with the stance that he was going in at. Like I see like him like trying to throw the jab and try to incorporate the jab, but early he was doing that, and then it seemed like he abandoned it. And then two, the stance that he was at was like he had his left hand low, and I don't like having that left hand low. It opens up for lead right hands. You could, if you're lazy with the jab, especially coming from that low, it takes a little bit more time to come from that particular spot to bring your arm out and then to throw a jab. So you're giving your opponent a little bit more time to see it coming, and then they could avoid it and then come back with a right. So I was like, you leaving them opportunities to get back at you. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So the thing about that is that let's take that stance that he had and put it on another fighter, Andre Ward. Andre Ward does that too. But the thing that I thought was a silver lining before he reverted back to what he know is that early when he did it, he was doing it at a distance that he would be okay with being able to do that. Like people mistake Floyd shoulder rolling and doing all that stuff as him just going in the fight and straight shoulder rolling. But he does that stuff at a certain distance to where he knows like he'll be safe, and or Andre Ward holding his hand down to the left, he does it to where he's at a distance to where he'll be safe, and then he can lift the hand all the way out and get maximum extension and hit you at the end of like a power jab sort of. So early he was ducking under shots, like he wasn't getting hit as much early, and it looked good early. But to continue it and he reverted back to who he was, hand down, getting hit later. He's more tired. The guy is a energizer bunny rabbit, that he fighting. The right
Yeah.
style and right distance, you can get away with that, but you can't use that all fight. You can use it at the right distance, but then when you get in, put your dang hand up. But with him being taller and fighting a shorter fighter on the inside, yeah, he was getting shots in, but he gonna always be at a disadvantage most times when he fighting a shorter fighter, especially a fighter who likes fighting like that on the inside.
Yeah. And the thing with Resendiz too was like, I mean, he, even though like I was saying, he came in with a number of fights that were north of 160 pounds, around 168. He was moving very well there at the weight that he was in. And I know that they were talking about like during the fight that he had his trainer there, Manny Robles, saying that maybe you could possibly see Resendiz even down to 154. But I'm like, while he's been there having fights at like 170, but after like the second and third rounds, you've seen Resendiz kind of like move around or move off to the side a lot. So he was not necessarily right in front of Jarrett Hurd. And I think that's the thing about Hurd is that he likes a lot of his opponents to be standing right in front of him. If you move off to the side or you move laterally, he has to like reset, everything that he does in order to try to get back at you. And with Resendiz throwing a number of those combinations and moving out of that line, that kind of like push or tilted the fight over to his advantage. Right, bringing in another long-time contributor to the boxing source here, brother, or the chef here with another dish is his avatar here on YouTube. But I mean, see, man, you're trying to get people hungry up in here, man. What's going on with all that, Terrell?
I was about to say he talking like he hungry, Terrell.
Hey, what's going on, guys?
What's going on?
I've been a bit disconnected from the sport, but nevertheless, I'm still here though. Things like that. But once again, I just want to jump on real quick for a while and see what's going on with everything.
Yeah, just been all good, man. Chopping it up. Talk about this thing here with Hurd and Resendiz, man. Hurd, he just got beat up over the course of those rounds, especially in the last 2 rounds. That forced the stoppage to happen, man. He said that he wants to get be back in the ring, but I'm like, after this, I don't know,
Yeah, it's very, very safe to say that Hurd is done at this point, and I'm not talking about done with the division or we're talking about done with boxing. And one thing, just to put a point out there, that's something that we've always talked about over the years, and it's something I want to put pen and paper to, James, for something to get done over this week for us and everything. Does one loss kill a boxer, right? Just that thought right there. So when you look over just
what was saying? I don't know, Brother Terrell might be on the move there real quick. But real quick on the YouTube front, man. Shout out to Modern King Boxing, contributing in here to the boxing source. We appreciate it here. It was a decent night of boxing. And yeah, I mean, the middleweight division, it's still like a lot of activity that still has to take place in the middleweight division. You know what I'm saying? So that's what's going down there, man. But yeah, for those that want to also contribute, you can hit up the Cash App also with the $sign the boxing source. So you could just hit us up there. Yeah, I think Terrell is like on the move there, so maybe he'll be able to connect here a little bit later. But yeah, he said like, and I said it as well, man. Immediately after the fight, I felt like Jarrett Hurd should just like not really continue his career, man. I really don't see where he could go at this particular point. I get that this matchup wasn't a good matchup for him, but in the middleweight division, I'm trying to figure out like where he could go at this point. You know what I'm saying? right, let's see if Terrell get back in here.
I wouldn't completely write the man off. Like, yes, I agree with everyone in that he definitely has a shelf life in the punishment that he's taken, and we're seeing the expiration like happening in front of us. But he had some shining lights there. He had some things that were positive. He just had a guy that that was gonna take no for an answer, and that was young too. I mean, I think he need to stop closer sooner than later, but I don't think he done just after this.
Well, look at this. So the Jerry Hurd that we saw last night is a basic shell of himself, and not just from last night. This last fight against Luis Arias,
Yeah,
last year and everything. We're used to Jerry coming in and posting his physical size on people and just walking people down and having that size just beat people up, right?
yeah.
He just looks he's there. He's there. There's no dominance in him, and obviously, and from my viewpoint, that just comes from a lack of will to fight, right? So we look at this. He's had a long layoff, and not it's not his fault, but he's had some major things that go on in his life with the loss of his father, things like that. And honestly, if you've ever lost a father or something like that, it takes a lot out of you. It really does. It takes a lot of mental strength out of you losing your father, because I lost mine, right? And on top of that, everyone deals with that differently. Some people can come back faster, some people cannot. And with Hurd, his father was a central part of his life within boxing, and now that voice is gone. I think Hurd got married, things like that. He's just done lots of away from boxing. Just I'm not saying he just have a lack of passion for it. Just life just kind of moves on for him in that sense, with the things that's happened with his life. And now we have a former shell of himself that we see right now. And like I said, people like Arias and this guy last night, we're used to seeing Hurd show his dominance over these guys like that with his size and stuff like that. And we just don't have that no more. We don't have that anymore. So, like I said before, does one loss kill a career? Not always, but sometimes it can, depend on how you lose. Will you get knocked out? Did you erupt up? Things like that. Did you incur an injury? Whatever that is. Because as we know, if Jake Paul, don't kill me, can take a loss and still have many options out there. But that's a whole different story. I know that. I'm just joking on that one. But sometimes a loss can start derailment of your career for different reasons, things like that. So for me, Hurd is definitely done, and he can walk away high. He's been a unified champ. He's made some accomplishments. Walk away, because I don't think he has that passion for it no more.
And I've seen him like be a commentator for a number of fights there for Premier Boxing Champions. So maybe they could have a few things out there for him for that. But he feels like he wants to, continue his career. That he says he'll get right back in it. Modern King says here on the live chat that Jared Hurd improved, but he's not as resilient as before, and his defense is pretty garbage.
So let me speak to that, because I agree. You see improvement with this guy. He's a shell of himself in terms of the dog who's gonna throw a bunch of punches and be in a war. He's a shell of himself for that form. If he can improve, get with the right coach, pretty much do what Deontay Wilder is having to do, like transform himself from being. Deontay Wilder wasn't no like slug fist except for like Tyson Fury fights, but he got to transform himself, and that means he need to do better with his defense. That means that he gotta, if he gonna take that style, he gotta learn how to fight going backwards. If he gonna do the little hand down, he got to know when to do it. And just I would probably, who would I relate this to with like losing and like reforming? So Deontay Wilder, but Wilder is a different set of skills than him. I'm trying to think of somebody who did it. Even Abner Mares, like, you remember when he lost and stuff? Remember when Abner Mares was in this same sort of position? He sort of started commentating, then he fought like once a year or something, and won some fights, won some good fights. Like I don't think he the heel is there now, but he's not like in a coffin.
Yeah, I mean, I feel you on that, but it's like it's like in the live chat in Modern King, saying like Resendiz was taking the style that Hurd had and was turning them constantly. Yeah, he was like moving off to the side. He was throwing 2, 3, 4 punch combinations and then turning off to the side, but. Also, what you were bringing up, boxing academic, with Deontay Wilder, like kind of changing the style. That could be one thing, but also one other thing that you talk about with Deontay Wilder is the opponents that Deontay Wilder has is that once they face Deontay Wilder and take the shots from Deontay Wilder, they're not the same after that. And so maybe the fights that Jared Hurd has had over the years, that they may have had an effect on Jared Hurd. So maybe his punch resistance is different on that. You know what I'm saying?
He definitely not the same. I agree. He's and we'll probably see that more and more as he fights, like him getting buzzed more and probably eventually start getting stopped. But the man tough as shit. Like he take a lot of shots and throwing another person being in that position, they had to be down a lot more than what Jared Hurd head was down.
Yeah.
Like Hurd, you could tell you saw doubt in him, but he still wanted to win. And to me, that's the definition of a champion. When the cards are down, to not give up.
It's one thing to just see what's going on with you, but you still want to go out there and see if you can still try to win and whatnot. You know what I'm saying? But it was just at that particular instance late in the fight, I just felt like Resendiz was able to take a number of those shots that Hurd was throwing at him, and Hurd abandoning the jab and just trying to be solely a counter punch type of guy that just didn't necessarily work for him. So maybe if he does get back into it, that they match him up fairly well. If he's gonna adopt that type of a style, a catch and shoot counter style, and try to get at his opponents that way, then they would need someone, like I said, that has to be right in front of them. I don't think a guy that can move really well would be a good look for Jared Hurd if he's gonna get back into the ring and stuff like that. So like I said, I wait and see what they're gonna do with Hurd, but like I said, it's one thing to kind of like get beat. But he really is different. Like you say sometimes, or like people say sometimes, when it comes to like a knockout, instead of like being a TKO stoppage victory type of thing. Like if you get knocked out, like how Deontay Wilder like knocked out a number of his fighters like within the first few rounds, then that's like a clean knockout. But if you get beat down like over the course of 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 rounds, then that has a lasting effect on you. And in this particular instance here with Hurd, that could have some lasting effects on there, man. Once again, shout out to Modern King, man. Here, man. Hey, fellow Pisces, that's what's up. That's what's up. That's big up to your daughters on there, man. Pisces in the building, because next Monday it's the Earth Strong. So that's what's up there, man. Terrell back in the building. You know what I'm saying? Try to chop it up with us here on the Boxing Source. What else was out there, man? Well, before I get into that whole thing with the that last bout, back into the thing with Figueroa and Mark Magsayo. Like I said before, I thought it was a much closer bout than the scorecards rolled out. I thought that when the initial point was taken off from Mark Magsayo, I thought that was huge as far as like the outcome of the bout would be. But apparently that and the other point deduction that happened in the 11th round really didn't matter much, as the judges, like all three judges, at least gave Brandon Figueroa in 9 of the 12 rounds. I did not expect that. Like 9 out of 12 rounds at minimum, and one judge gave Figueroa 10 out of the 12 rounds. So that one was kind of a shock to me. That it was first, I thought it was like a unanimous decision. I thought it would have been like something like maybe a split or majority decision. But the scores, reading that far or that wide, that was like really surprising me, on that sense. Box Academic, that Figueroa Magsayo fight. What did you think about that one?
I watched it, but I wasn't like intently watching it because I was doing like other stuff too.
Oh, you were waiting for that John Jones fight? Oh.
I mean, I watched the John Jones fight. I don't know. Figueroa, sometimes like those fights to me, don't get me wrong, they're exciting, but it's something about it that makes it uninteresting in a sense. Like it make like when I watch some of his fights, my mind started to wander, and I don't have the words for it right now, but it's not even like how people describe Erislandy Lara, and then he's sort of using the ring and using his IQ. It's not like that mind wandering, but it's more so. So they get into an exchange. He tried to throw a shot, and then one person to swing, the other person to swing, and then they both like on the opposite side of the punch, and then they sort of locked up like that all the time, and it just the awkwardness of the fight to where almost every other exchange ends in holding or an awkward sort of exchange.
Oh.
And it's like repetitive. It's something that makes it just make me lose attention when I watch them sort of like fights. Great fighters, both of them was trying to win. I'm not, taking anything away from them. I'm just telling the truth. My mind started wandering. I was like texting and stuff, and
Yeah, I feel you. I think like in the beginning or the first part of the fight, right? Like you have both Magsayo and Figueroa. Like initially, they're orthodox fighters, but Figueroa came into that fight or started off that fight as a southpaw. So he was, coming in there, having his left hand back and having his, right foot forward. And so, yeah, you had a number of those exchanges that happened, and they ended up having to either, be in a clinch or, maybe the heads landed together a couple times or whatever it was, but it just didn't seem like some of those exchanges were all too good. But you did have instances where Magsayo just threw a good number of 3 or 4 punch combinations that looked like he landed pretty well, but Figueroa was able to take that and then still try to incorporate a strategy of trying to come forward, which I didn't think that he would really do that against someone that's good amount shorter than, or don't necessarily have the reach that he has. So Figueroa, was just still doing the thing where he would just come forward and just try to wear down his opponent and make Magsayo, and it looked like it was working there until the end of the fight. But if it wasn't for referee Thomas Taylor, giving multiple warnings to Magsayo before taking a point, then you probably would have had a different type of a fight there in that particular sense. Now, I did say like earlier, like in the 9th round and 10th round, you had Mark Magsayo. You seen that his legs weren't necessarily there. Like he was leaning forward. He was having his, upper body like leaning down real far, and that, the activity from Brandon Figueroa seemed like it was overwhelming Magsayo. But for some, I don't know how he was able to do it, but it looked like either he had it to where he was able to tie up Brandon Figueroa or have Figueroa in a position to where Figueroa couldn't shake him and then get off of him. So when he did, necessarily fall down on the canvas, it didn't necessarily count as a knockdown, but I thought he would have had those type of opportunities. But before I continue on there, I want to formally introduce a person to be on the Boxing Source radio show. That is the world famous MVO in the building. With a little static or something. I don't know what's going on.
Hey, listen, I'm gonna warn you about a few things before I start.
Uh-oh.
One, I literally just woke up. I've been drinking all night until like 2 p.m. in the afternoon. I didn't even go home yet. I slept at the bar, and I'm drinking again. But you know.
Oh my God! Yo,
But,
what's going on?
but you know. Okay.
Oh man! Hey, hopefully this video don't have any copyright issues.
Yeah. Yo, Mike Grady, what's good, Mike Grady?
Not much, man. You over there drinking rum and Red Bull and stuff.
I'm
But
chilling.
how you been, man? I ain't spoke to you. I feel like it's been a while.
It has been a while, man. How'd you enjoy this past weekend's fight?
I watched most of them. The last fight, the Magsayo and
Figueroa.
Figueroa. I don't know, man. It was something that kept making me lose my attention span. Like the way that when they would exchange shots, they would get locked up or like grab, sort of like it was repetitive in that way. Like every other exchange was sort of like that, and it made me sort of my mind wander a bit.
Yeah, Magsayo did hold a lot. It
Yeah,
was very weird that Magsayo went down on his own a lot too.
yeah.
Well, I
It's
get
kind of
that
like
part. If somebody leaning on you, you could be um
man.
Charlo. You could be Charlo and fight against it and have strong legs, or you could not fight against it and just fall to your knees and save your strength in your legs.
Shit, maybe that's what Wilder should did against Fury. You gotta think about it.
I mean, he did it a couple times, like toward the end before it was over.
But I think that's just his legs was zapped at that point.
Yeah, his legs were like done. And
True, true, true.
the funny thing about it was like I had watched the interview with Sean Gibbons, what was it, like on Fight Hype or something like that, where he was talking about this is like right after Mark Magsayo had that second weigh-in where he was able to make weight at 126, and he was saying like, hey man, I'm liking Magsayo, those first 6 rounds or so, but then after that, it might be a little bit of a concern. So I'm like, well, hey, look at what happened with him, in that second half of the fight. He was holding left and right. He was, having those points taken away. He was leaning forward. He was off balance. His legs weren't necessarily there. And I'm like, well, guess he really didn't have, enough energy to try to.
Well, if they had that concern, he was fighting the absolute worst person he could fight. Because Brandon Figueroa is a fucking monster. Okay? And I hope people realize that this kid is an elite fighter. He's an elite fighter with an elite chin and an elite motor. So I hope people realize that.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, he's like former, world champion there at 122, and he'll probably do some damage here at 126. I mean, he has that fight lined up that could be lined up against Ray Vargas, who was, there in attendance at the fight last night. And I think that would be a pretty good fight there too. So Ray Vargas is gonna have to be ready, man. He's already come off that tough fight against O'Shaquie Foster at 130. Now he's going back down to 126
There's nowhere to hide.
So yep.
There's nowhere to hide, man. Now the problem for Ray Vargas is that Figueroa is just as big and just as long as him. So he's not going to have those advantages. And we saw that he struggled when he didn't have like the full size advantage against O'Shaquie Foster. Yep. So maybe Vargas is just an ordinary fighter when he's fighting someone that's bigger than him.
Yep. Because the thing with him is like his size or his length it really wasn't effective there against Oshaki Foster. Foster was moving him. He was moving him a lot during the course of that fight. And so now he's going up against Figueroa, who's, like you said, is around that same size. So if he doesn't have that advantage, what else is he going to do there in this particular instance, man? It'll be interesting to see what Ray Vargas does at this point. But I mean, like I said, he's built up a fairly big record up to that point. But outside of that, I'm not necessarily sure what Vargas can do at this particular point here against someone like a Brandon Figueroa. So
now, what do you think is next for Magsayo? Now, this is the guy who basically became champion because Gary Russell had one arm, and he has not looked impressive since.
Right.
And honestly, he didn't look impressive against a man with one arm.
Well,
so
here's the thing, right? He didn't look impressive against Gary Russell Jr. He really didn't look that impressive against Julio Ceja, which was before the Gary Russell Jr. fight. He just ended up getting the knockdowns in that round 1 and then the knockout in round 10. So now I'm like, well, I don't know where it could go at this particular point, especially in the featherweight division. Something tells me that I wouldn't be surprised if he goes up to 130. Not just because
to do what?
With the weight. Yeah, with the weight thing, but I really can't find an option or other options out there for him at 126.
Yeah, but who's he beating at 130?
I don't know if it's about who's going to beat at 130. It's about who he's going to be able to fight at 130. I don't know, man. Maybe they find someone like Arboleda or somebody, or Francisco Fonseca, who's still a contender there in the 130-pound division. They might, find a few guys out there for him like that. I don't know. Maybe they'll put him as an opponent for Leo Santa Cruz. Who knows? I think Santa Cruz was there in attendance too, so who knows, man?
That would actually be pretty interesting.
Yeah, that'll be an interesting fight there. Leo Santa Cruz and Mark Magsayo. So maybe that could be in the cards there in reference to that. But that's mainly the card there. I mean, I had already talked about the thing with Jared Hurd getting stopped by Armando Resendiz, man.
Don't be mad. UCS is hiring.
Yeah, that's what Brother Terrell was talking about before you got on, man. It's like, maybe it should be a wrap for Jared Hurd, man. I mean, I know that he fought a guy that was kind of like fighting fights that were bigger than Hurd, but I mean, I just don't see what's out there for him in the middleweight division. So that's pretty much the breaks out there for him in that sense, man. It looks like Brother MVO is going to be back on the prowl there in the bars and other hangouts there in New York City. So he travels to him while he gets mashed up out there. You know what I'm saying? But that kind of like covers like most of that card. I mean, that's the thing there. I know that there's been a good amount of talk about what the comments from a world title contender or a contender there in the super lightweight division in Yuri Antoine Russell. But first, I would have to go back to the extended interview or the full interview that I conducted with him last month to pretty much get the gist of what that comes from in reference to Gary Antoine Russell and Alberto Puello, but may talk about that a little bit later in the week. So there's that. Also, there's some rumblings going down as far as like maybe there's a little bit of a chance or a shot that we could potentially see Errol Spence fighting Terrence Crawford, but I mean that remains to be seen. I still have to check on the date as far as like when the negotiations for the WBO mandatory is up. It's supposed to be 20 days from I think it's last week. between Terrence Crawford and Alexis Rocha. So we'll see how that necessarily goes in reference to that. But I mean, hey, if Golden Boy was able to get his fighter in Ryan Garcia to fight Gervonta Tank Davis, or was it Ryan Garcia that pushed for that fight? Then maybe, just maybe, we might have an outside shot of Spence versus Crawford, but that remains to be seen. As far as I'm concerned, that's like mostly what I got in reference to this. Other topics I can't necessarily talk about at this particular point. We just have to see what's going to happen later this week. There's supposed to be a 2-day press conference of sorts with Gervonta Tank Davis and Ryan Garcia. That's supposed to be scheduled for Wednesday and Thursday of this week. So we'll pretty much see like what happens with all of that. As far as like other news is concerned, we'll see what happens as far as like the Caleb Plant versus David Benavidez fight card. We'll probably see if we can line up some interviews with fighters that are part of that card. So be on the lookout for that. We'll see if we can work out on that as well too. So we'll try to get most of these fighters that are involved in that March 25th card in Las Vegas, headlined by David Benavidez versus Caleb Plant there at the MGM Grand Garden Arena on March 25th. So a number of things that we'll try to do here at the Boxing Source, but for the time being, that kind of like covers everything I really wanted to cover here this week. We'll get right back at it next week, as there really isn't that much action coming up for March 11th. I know that they're supposed to have some fight with Callum Smith, but he got injured, so his fight is scrapped for March 11th. But outside of that, big thanks for everyone that had contributed to this particular episode. Like I said, once again, if you want to contribute to the movement, the Boxing Source, you could hit us up on the Cash App with that $, the Boxing Source. We really appreciate it. We're trying to get some things done here with the Boxing Source and try to expand the staff, so to speak, at the Boxing Source. We do have the website, theboxingsource.net. We're looking for writers to contribute to the Boxing Source website. So we're still working on that to see if we can get some columnists on that particular segment of the website. So with that being said, I close with my saying at the end of every show, the point of boxing is to hit and not get hit, not to stand and trade. On that note, folks, I'm out. Have a good evening, everybody.